The massive Imperial scout ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its sleek black hull reflecting the distant sunlight. Captain Mark Reed of the Imperial Exploration Fleet stood confidently on the bridge, expecting to find yet another primitive civilization to add to the Empire's growing collection. His smile faded as the ship's sensors began screaming warnings. "Captain, multiple defense platforms detected around the third planet." The sensor officer's voice shook with surprise. "And, sir, there's some kind of energy shield covering the entire planet." Reed stepped closer to the main view screen, his golden uniform gleaming under the bridge lights. This was impossible. According to Imperial records, this system shouldn't have advanced beyond primitive rocket technology for at least another century. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's perfectly formatted in Imperial Standard." Reed nodded, trying to hide his unease. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a calm-faced man in a blue uniform. "This is Captain John Adams of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered protected space. Please state your intentions." Reed's training kicked in. "This is Captain Reed of the Imperial Scout Ship Dominion. We represent the Galactic Empire, bringing civilization and progress to." "We are well aware of what you bring, Captain Reed," Adams interrupted, his voice firm but not hostile. "We've been watching your empire's expansion for the past 30 years through our quantum observation network." The bridge fell silent. 30 years. They had been watching. Reed's mind raced. The empire's closest territory was over 2,000 light-years away. "Perhaps," Adams continued, "you should alert your superiors that Earth is not interested in your particular brand of civilization." As he spoke, dozens of ships emerged from behind Earth's moon, their designs unlike anything in the Imperial database. Reed gripped his command chair. "You don't understand. The Empire brings order, technology, advancement." "You mean like the order you brought to the Rigel colonies?" Adams asked, bringing up footage of Imperial ships bombarding civilian cities, or the advancement you offered the Centauri worlds before stripping them of resources. "How did you?" "As I said, we've been watching. Earth made a decision long ago, Captain. We chose a different path than endless expansion and dominance. We chose to advance ourselves morally as well as technologically." The sensor officer interrupted again, panic in his voice. "Sir, energy readings are off the scale. The planetary shield, it's not just defensive. It's some kind of quantum barrier. Our weapons wouldn't even reach the surface." Reed felt sweat on his forehead. This wasn't how first contact scenarios were supposed to go. The Empire always had the upper hand. Always. "Let me be clear," Adams said, leaning forward slightly. "Earth is not joining your empire. We will not be conquered, subjugated, or uplifted. In fact, we have a different message for your empire." He paused, his eyes hard. "Your expansion stops here." As if to emphasize the point, more ships appeared, seemingly stepping out of invisible doors in space itself. The Empire's sensors couldn't even begin to understand the technology they were seeing. "Return to your empire, Captain Reed." Adams continued. "Tell them what you found here. Tell them that humanity rejects their offer before they even make it. And tell them that if they continue their policy of forced expansion," he gestured to the fleet around him, "they'll find Earth standing in their way." Reed knew a dismissal when he heard one. More importantly, he knew when he was outmatched. "This isn't over," he managed to say, trying to maintain some dignity. "The Empire doesn't take rejection well." Adams actually smiled at that. "Neither does Earth, Captain. Neither does Earth. Safe journey home." The transmission cut off, leaving Reed staring at his own reflection in the black screen. As his ship prepared to jump back to Imperial space, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something unprecedented. A world that not only could resist the Empire but had chosen to do so before the Empire even arrived. In his quarters later, preparing his report, Reed wrote words he never thought he'd use. Approach with extreme caution. This world is not what we thought. Earth is ready for us. And worse, they've been ready for a long time. The scout ship Dominion disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a solar system that had just announced itself to the galaxy, not as another conquest, but as a line in the space. A line that said simply, no further. 3 weeks after Captain Reed's encounter with Earth, the Imperial First Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 50 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon, formed a battle line that stretched across space like a wall of metal and energy. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Fist, his black and gold uniform perfectly pressed. The crew worked in tense silence as they prepared to broadcast his message to Earth. "Let's show these upstarts what real power looks like," Stone said, straightening his collar. "Begin transmission." The main screen lit up, showing the Earth Council chamber. Director Emma Wright sat at the center, her gray hair and calm expression making her look more like someone's grandmother than the leader of a planet that dared to challenge the Empire. "This is Admiral Stone of the Imperial First Fleet," he announced, his voice echoing through both ships. "Your response to our scout ship was unfortunate. However, the Empire is willing to be generous. Join us peacefully, and your world will be granted special status within our dominion." Director Wright smiled slightly. "And if we refuse?" Stone's face hardened. "Then we will take what we want by force. You have 1 hour to..." "Actually," Wright interrupted, pressing a button on her desk, "we have something to show you first." The screen split, showing dozens of recordings. Stone's blood ran cold as he recognized them. Footage of Imperial ships bombing civilian targets. Secret meetings where Imperial governors planned to strip worlds of resources. Hidden laboratories where Imperial scientists conducted horrible experiments on captured species. "We've been gathering evidence for decades," Wright explained. "While you thought we were just another primitive world, our stealth ships were documenting everything. Every atrocity. Every broken promise. Every world you destroyed." Stone's hands gripped the command rail. "These are lies. Propaganda." "Really?" Wright raised an eyebrow. "Because we're broadcasting this same evidence across your empire right now. To every world. Every colony. Every ship. Your own citizens are watching as we speak." Panic erupted on the bridge as reports started coming in. Somehow, Earth had hacked into the Empire's communication network. The footage was playing everywhere, impossible to stop. "You're making a terrible mistake," Stone growled. "This fleet can reduce your world to ash." "No, Admiral. You made the mistake." Wright's voice grew harder. "You thought Earth would be like all the others, but we're not here to join your empire. We're here to help break it." As if on cue, alarms blared across the Imperial fleet. Ships were appearing all around them, emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. Earth's defense fleet had somehow surrounded them while they talked. "This is your only warning," Wright continued. "Leave Earth space, never return. And know that from this day forward, any world that wants to break free from your empire will have Earth's full support." Stone's face turned red with rage. "You dare threaten the Empire? We've conquered 1,000 worlds. And yet you've never faced anything like Earth," Wright replied calmly. "We've spent centuries preparing, Admiral. Not just building weapons, but creating something far more dangerous to your empire. Hope. Hope for all the worlds you've enslaved." The Earth ships powered up their weapons. Strange energy patterns danced across their hulls, defying Imperial sensors' attempts to analyze them. 1 hour, Admiral," Wright said, mimicking his earlier ultimatum. 1 hour to leave our space. After that, we'll show you exactly why Earth chose to stand against your empire." The transmission cut off, leaving Stone staring at his own furious reflection. For the first time in his 30-year career, he felt real fear, not just of Earth's weapons, but of what their broadcast would do to the Empire. In the end, pride won over wisdom. Stone opened a channel to his fleet. "Prepare for battle," he ordered. "We'll show these humans what happens to those who defy the Empire." As his ships moved into attack formation, Stone didn't notice his crew's uncertain glances. He didn't see the doubt in their eyes after watching Earth's evidence. He didn't realize that this battle would mark not just a military confrontation, but the beginning of the Empire's greatest nightmare, the truth being set free. The battle between Earth's defense fleet and the Imperial First Fleet lasted exactly 6 minutes. Not because Earth's ships were more powerful, but because they weren't really there at all. Admiral Stone watched in horror as his weapons passed straight through the Earth vessels. The entire defensive fleet had been a hologram, a distraction. While he had been preparing for battle, Earth had launched its real attack. Commander Tom Reed led his small stealth ship through Imperial space, completely invisible to their sensors. His team had already hit 3 Imperial data centers, releasing classified information to every conquered world in the sector. But their main target lay ahead, the Imperial Central Archives on New Rome. "Status report," Reed whispered, though he knew the Imperials couldn't hear them even if he shouted. "Quantum shields holding steady," Lisa Wells, his tech officer, replied. "They still have no idea we're here. Our virus is spreading through their network. 30% of all Imperial worlds are now receiving the truth broadcasts." Reed nodded, watching through the view screen as they approached the massive archive building. It looked like a temple, all gleaming metal and sharp angles reaching into the purple alien sky. Inside were the Empire's darkest secrets and humanity's best chance at breaking their power without a massive war. "Begin Phase 2, Reed ordered. Across Imperial space, things started going wrong for the Empire. Prison camp force fields mysteriously failed, letting captives escape. Military computers began displaying proof of Imperial corruption. Communication systems broadcast evidence of the Empire's lies directly to its citizens. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Stone received increasingly panicked reports. "Sir, we're losing control of the outer colonies. The prisoner worlds are in full revolt. Our weapons systems are locking up." Stone slammed his fist on his command chair. How are they doing this?" The answer came from his own computer, which suddenly displayed a message. "While you watched our ships, you should have watched your shadows." In the Central Archives, Reed's team worked quickly, their quantum phase suits letting them walk straight through walls. They looked like ghosts, visible only to each other thanks to their special visors. "Uploading the final data packet now," Wells reported. "Every dirty secret, every hidden crime, every suppressed truth, it's all going public. No way to stop it." Reed allowed himself a small smile. Earth's leaders had been right. The Empire's greatest weakness wasn't its military might, but the lies it was built on. All they had to do was expose those lies. "Sir," Wells called out suddenly, "Imperial ships are abandoning their posts across 3 sectors. The colonial worlds. They're declaring independence." On his flagship, Admiral Stone watched his mighty fleet fall into chaos. The truth broadcasts had reached his own crews. Many were refusing to fire on civilian targets. Others were openly questioning Imperial authority. "Shut down all communications," he ordered desperately. "Lock down every channel." "It's too late, sir," his communications officer replied quietly. "The information, it's everywhere." And Earth just released proof that high-ranking Imperial officers have been stealing wealth from their own people for centuries. Stone felt his power slipping away with each passing moment. He had expected a military battle, something he could fight with ships and weapons. Instead, Earth had turned his own empire's secrets against him. In the archives, Reed's team completed their mission. As they prepared to phase back to their ship, he took one last look at the great Imperial building. "Send the final message," he ordered. Across the Empire, on every screen, display and communication device, the same words appeared. "The Empire is built on lies. Earth stands with those who choose freedom." The truth can no longer be contained. As his ship quietly slipped away from New Rome, Reed thought about how Earth had spent decades preparing for this moment. Not building bigger weapons or stronger shields, but gathering the one thing the Empire couldn't defend against: the truth about itself. The silent war had begun, and the Empire was fighting an enemy it couldn't see, couldn't catch, and couldn't stop. An enemy armed not with warships and bombs, but with something far more powerful: the evidence of the Empire's own crimes, finally exposed to the light of day. The Imperial Grand Fleet appeared in the Sol system without warning. 500 warships, led by the massive dreadnought Emperor's Wrath, filled space with their dark shades. At their head stood Grand Admiral Robert Drake, a human who had joined the Empire 20 years ago. He alone knew Earth's greatest secret because he had helped create it. "Begin the attack," Drake ordered, his voice cold. No mercy this time. The Imperial ships opened fire. Planet-destroying weapons lit up space with their deadly light. The Earth Defense Fleet, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. But Drake knew their ships weren't Earth's real protection. "Deploy the phase disruptors," he commanded. "Let's see how Earth handles its greatest trick being turned against it." On Earth's surface, Director Wright received the alarming news. "Ma'am, they're using quantum phase technology. They can pierce our shield." Wright remained calm, pressing a button on her desk. "Activate Protocol 0. Drake watched with satisfaction as his weapons struck Earth's surface. But something was wrong. The explosions weren't causing any damage. Instead, they passed through buildings and ground like they weren't even there. "Impossible," Drake whispered. Then he understood. No, they couldn't have. On his command screen, Earth began to fade away. Not just the shield, but the entire planet. Buildings, oceans, continents, all becoming transparent like a ghost. "You taught us well, Robert," Wright's voice came through the communication system. "But you only knew half the truth." Drake's face went pale. The quantum shield. It wasn't for protection. "No," Wright agreed. "It was practice. For 20 years, we've been practicing to phase shift not just ships or soldiers, but our entire planet." The Earth fleet suddenly appeared behind the Imperial Armada, their weapons already charged. But Drake barely noticed them. He was watching in horror as Earth itself vanished completely, shifting into another dimension. "You see, Robert," Wright continued, "we knew the Empire would eventually find a way through our defenses. So we created the ultimate escape plan. You can't conquer what you can't touch." "Director," Drake shouted, real fear in his voice. "You don't understand what you're doing. Moving an entire planet between dimensions. It's never been done. You'll destroy yourselves." Wright's voice was steady. "We've had decades to perfect the technology. Every simulation, every test, every small-scale experiment led to this moment. Earth isn't running away, Robert. We're changing the rules of the game." Around Drake's fleet, space itself seemed to shimmer. Earth was gone, but in its place, hundreds of previously invisible defense platforms appeared. They had been there all along, hidden in the same dimensional space Earth now occupied. "Target their engines," Wright ordered. "Disable, don't destroy." Drake watched helplessly as his ships lost power one by one. The mighty Imperial fleet, largest in history, was being systematically shut down by weapons they couldn't even understand. "Why?" Drake demanded. "Why go to all this trouble? Why not just build bigger weapons like every other world?" "Because we're not like every other world," Wright replied. "Earth chose a different path. We decided that true power isn't about destruction, it's about protecting life. Even yours, Robert." As his ship's systems failed around him, Drake finally understood. Earth hadn't been preparing for war. They had been preparing to make war itself obsolete. What good were planet-destroying weapons against a planet that could simply step sideways out of reality? "Stand down, Robert," Wright said quietly. "The Empire can't win this fight. Not with weapons, Not with armies, not with anything. Earth will return when you leave, and we'll continue helping others break free from the Empire. But we'll do it our way, without massive bloodshed. Drake looked at his useless weapons, his powerless ships, and the empty space where Earth had been. In that moment, he realized that humanity hadn't just outmatched the Empire. They had evolved beyond it. The age of conquest was over. The age of quantum civilization had begun. Commander Tom Reed stood in Earth's central command chamber, his face grim as he shared what his team had discovered in the Imperial archives. The room was silent except for his voice and the soft hum of quantum computers. The Empire isn't just conquering worlds for resources or power, he explained, bringing up holographic images from the stolen data. They're harvesting consciousness itself. Director Wright leaned forward in her chair. Explain. Reed gestured, and the hologram showed massive Imperial facilities hidden on dead worlds. They've developed a way to extract and store the mental energy of entire populations. They use it to power their immortality technology. Every Imperial leader, every high-ranking official, they're all hundreds of years old. The images showed massive storage chambers filled with glowing containers, each holding what looked like pure light. These are the stored minds of billions of beings from conquered worlds. Reed continued. The Empire literally feeds on the consciousness of other species to maintain their eternal life. Admiral Drake, now in Earth custody, spoke up from his seat. Now you understand why I joined them. They offered me immortality, a chance to live forever. And the cost? Wright asked sharply. How many minds does it take to keep one Imperial leader alive? Drake looked away. Thousands, every year. The room erupted in angry mutters, but Wright raised her hand for silence. What's interesting, she said, is that we had this same technology 300 years ago. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise, even Drake. We discovered consciousness transfer in 2218, Wright explained. Our scientists learned how to extract mental energy and use it to extend life. But we also discovered something else. The moral cost was too high. She stood up and walked to the hologram. Humanity made a choice. We decided that true advancement meant growing beyond the fear of death, not enslaving others to avoid it. We chose a different path. Impossible, Drake whispered. You're saying Earth could have had immortality centuries ago. We had it, Wright corrected, and we rejected it. Instead, we focused on making life better for everyone, on advancing as a species, not just as individuals. New images appeared, showing Earth's massive underground research facilities. While the Empire was busy stealing life from others, we learned to extend our natural lifespans through ethical means, to enhance our minds without taking from others, to grow beyond the need for eternal life by making our limited lives meaningful. Reed understood now why the Empire feared Earth so much. It wasn't just their technology, it was their choices. Earth had faced the same temptations as the Empire and chosen a different way. That's why they want Earth so badly, Drake said quietly. Your population, billions of minds that chose wisdom over power. The energy from your consciousness would keep the Imperial leaders alive for thousands of years. And that's exactly why we'll stop them, Wright declared. Not just to protect ourselves, but to free every mind they've enslaved. To show the galaxy there's a better way. She turned to Reed. Commander, begin Phase 3. Target every consciousness storage facility in Imperial space. We're going to free those trapped minds. You'll destroy the Empire. Drake protested. Without the consciousness energy, their leaders will age centuries in days. No, Wright corrected. We'll force them to face the same choice we did. To learn to live with mortality, or to find ethical ways to extend life. The age of feeding on others' minds is over. As the meeting ended, Reed stayed behind with Wright. Director, he asked, how did humanity do it? How did we resist the temptation of immortality? Wright smiled sadly. We remembered what makes us human. Our mortality teaches us compassion. Our limited time teaches us to value life. In trying to live forever, the Empire forgot how to truly live at all. She looked at the images of the stolen mines, glowing like trapped stars. Now it's time to teach them what we learned, that the length of life matters far less than how we choose to live it. The Imperial Palace on New Rome shook as another explosion rocked the city. Inside the Grand Throne Room, Emperor Marcus Vale watched in disbelief as his eternal empire crumbled in days. "My lord," a guard rushed in, "the rebels have freed the consciousness storage facilities in 3 more sectors. Our leaders, they're aging rapidly." Vale looked at his reflection in a nearby mirror. His once perfect face now showed wrinkles that hadn't been there yesterday. Without the harvested consciousness energy, centuries of artificial life were catching up with him. On Earth, Commander Reed coordinated with Colonel Mary Turner, leader of the Imperial Resistance. Their quantum communication system let them talk as if they were in the same room, though she was halfway across the galaxy. "Earth's phase shift technology is working perfectly," Turner reported, her hologram showing her inside an Imperial base. "We can walk right through their security. Every prison we free joins our cause. The people are finally learning the truth." Reed nodded, watching the tactical display as more and more Imperial worlds turned green, indicating successful revolutions. "How are they taking the news about the consciousness harvesting?" "The regular Imperial citizens are horrified," Turner said. "Most had no idea their leaders were literally feeding on stolen minds to stay immortal. Every time we free a storage facility, thousands of minds return to their original bodies. People in Imperial hospitals are waking up from comas that lasted centuries." The display lit up with new alerts. Reed smiled as he read them. "The Imperial fleet at Centauri Base just surrendered. Their admiral aged 300 years in 2 days when we cut off his consciousness supply. The crew turned on him when they saw what he really was." In his palace, Emperor Vale received similarly bad news. His immortal generals were dying of extreme old age. His consciousness processing facilities were being destroyed or liberated. And worst of all, his own people were turning against him. "My lord," his advisor wheezed, "now looking ancient instead of eternal, perhaps we should consider Earth's offer. They say they can help us develop ethical life extension technology." "Never," Vale shouted, his voice cracking. "I ruled this empire for 700 years. I won't give up immortality." But his words rang hollow in the emptying palace. Outside, the streets filled with protesters, regular Imperial citizens, their eyes open to the truth, demanded an end to the consciousness harvesting. Military ships descended from orbit, but instead of attacking the protesters, they landed and joined them. Colonel Turner led her team through the Imperial Security Headquarters, their phase shift suits letting them ignore walls and barriers. "Another data core secured," she reported to Reed. "We're releasing proof of all their secrets. Financial records showing how they stole from their own people. Military logs of peaceful worlds destroyed for resisting the consciousness harvest. Everything." Reed watched the Empire's structure collapse like a house of cards. Not from Earth's weapons or armies, but from the simple power of truth. Imperial citizens, soldiers, and even some lower-ranking officials were rejecting the very foundation their society was built on. "Incoming transmission from the Imperial Palace," his computer announced. The screen showed Emperor Vale, but not the eternal, perfect ruler he pretended to be. Now he looked like what he really was, an ancient man desperately clinging to stolen time. "I want to negotiate," Vale said, his voice trembling. "Please, the aging, it's happening too fast. We need help." Reed glanced at Director Wright, who nodded. "Surrender completely," Reed told Vale. "Free every stored consciousness. Return every stolen mind. Accept that the age of immortality through theft is over. Do this and Earth will help you and your people transition to a natural life cycle." Vale looked at his withered hands, 7 centuries of borrowed time demanding repayment. In the background, revolution reached the palace gates. The Eternal Empire faced its final choice: adapt or die. evolution or extinction. The sound of their decision would echo across the galaxy. 1 year after the Great Revolution, the former imperial capital of New Rome hosted a very different kind of gathering. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the reformed Senate chamber, once reserved only for immortal imperial lords. Now it welcomed beings of all species, ages, and backgrounds. Director Wright stood at the podium, her gray hair and natural wrinkles a sharp contrast to the artificial perfection that once ruled here. Today, she announced, we formally established the Galactic Council of Free Worlds. Not an empire built on stolen life, but a confederation of equals. In the audience, Commander Reed sat next to Colonel Turner, both watching as their year of work came to fruition. The last consciousness storage facilities had been shut down months ago. Every stolen mind had been returned to its original body, or if the body was gone, given the choice of a new synthetic form. The transition wasn't easy, Turner whispered to Reed. Many Imperial leaders couldn't handle becoming mortal again, but the ones who accepted Earth's help are learning to live natural lives. Reed nodded. He had seen the rehabilitation centers where former Imperial Eternals learned to accept aging. Some even found peace in it, freed from the guilt of stealing others' consciousness to extend their own lives. The ceremony was interrupted by urgent news. Grand Admiral Drake, who had escaped during the Revolution, was making one final attempt to restore the old order. His remaining loyal fleet jumped into the system, weapons charged. You're throwing away perfection. Drake's transmission boomed through the chamber. Humanity had the secret to eternal life, and you rejected it. I'll show you your mistake. But as his ships moved to attack, something remarkable happened. The defense fleets of 20 different worlds jumped in to protect New Rome. Not just Earth's advanced ships, but vessels of all shapes and sizes, representing former Imperial worlds that now chose to stand together. You don't understand, Robert, Wright responded calmly. We didn't reject eternal life. We rejected stealing it from others. There's a difference. She nodded to Reed, who activated a hidden quantum transmitter. Across Drake's fleet, ships began powering down as their crews received a final truth broadcast. Proof that Drake had been secretly harvesting consciousness from their own families to maintain his immortality. Your own people deserve to know what you took from them, Wright continued. They deserve the same choice Earth made centuries ago. One by one, Drake's ships turned their weapons away. In the end, only his command vessel remained defiant. You've doomed us all to death, he shouted. No, Wright corrected. We've freed everyone to truly live. Drake's own crew finally turned on him, and the last attempt to restore the Empire ended not with a great battle, but with a simple arrest. As the danger passed, Wright returned to her speech. Let this be the last time we face such a choice, she said. Earth scientists have already begun sharing ethical life extension technology with all member worlds. We may not live forever, but we will live well, and we will live free. The new Galactic Council chambers erupted in cheers. Reed looked around at the celebrating representatives, former Imperial citizens mixing freely with those they once oppressed, sharing stories and hopes for the future. A small group of former Imperial Eternals, now aging naturally, approached Wright after the ceremony. Their leader, a woman who had once been an Imperial governor, spoke with tears in her eyes. We thought we needed to steal life to truly live, she said. But in becoming mortal again, we finally learned what living really means. Wright smiled. That's humanity's greatest discovery. Not how to phase shift planets or build quantum computers, but how to face our own mortality with dignity and help others do the same. As the celebration continued, Earth's defense fleet maintained its watch over the solar system. But now, they weren't just protecting one world. They were guarding a new idea. That true civilization isn't measured by how long its people can live, but by how well they use the time they have. The once eternal empire was gone. In its place stood something far more lasting, a galaxy of free worlds, choosing to face the future together, one natural day at a time.